In this video, we are going to learn how to approach a patient with anemia. What I have noticed over the years is that we all know what is the treatment of anemia, what are the causes of anemia, what are the investigations which are required for anemia. But we don't know how to approach a patient when we find signs and symptoms of anemia in any patient. We don't know how to investigate the patient. If we know how to investigate the patient, we don't know how to interpret those reports. At the end, we don't know when to start the treatment, when to stop the treatment. So in this video we will simplify how to approach the patient with anemia, with primarily aimed at learning iron deficiency anemia along with that. So coming to the first important thing, that is the most useless part of any chapter, that is definition. So what is anemia? WHO defines anemia as hemoglobin less than 13 gram in an adult male and less than 12 gram in an adult female. If it is pregnant, then it is 11. So basically what anemia means is that the oxygen delivery to the peripheral tissues is insufficient. That insufficiency may be due to decreased RBC mass or decreased hemoglobin in the RBCs. So before learning how to approach the patient, we will just learn what happens in erythropoiesis, how RBCs are produced, so that we can understand all the pathophysiology as well as how to investigate for any patient with anemia. So what is erythropoiesis? Erythropoiesis is a process by which RBCs are produced. So now basically for RBC, that is red blood cell, which contains cell proper along with hemoglobin. So to produce this, the things which we require for a cell, what we require is proteins. So we require amino acids, we require carbs, we require fats. So these three things are essential to produce a cell. Now to produce hemoglobin, we require two parts. Hemoglobin has two parts, that is, one is heme, the second part is globin. Now globin, as we all know, is protein. So to produce globin, we require amino acid. Now heme has protoporphyrin 9 ring along with iron. So basically what we require for heme is also amino acid, carbs, along with that is iron. Now iron is very important for erythropoiesis because iron is the important component which binds the oxygen in the hemoglobin. So now how these three all these things are important is that now if there is deficiency of, suppose, amino acid, carbs and fats, so as a result the production of the RBCs will be reduced. Even though iron is normal in the patient will still have anemia. So patients with protein energy malnutrition who are deficient in amino acid, carbs as well as fat will produce less amount of RBCs. Even if you give iron in them and don't correct the protein energy malnutrition, the patient's anemia will not be corrected. So all these things are important for production of RBCs. Now we will just learn how these things are absorbed. Now iron, as we all know, is a one-way compound, that is, once it is ingested, there is no way iron can be excreted out of the body. The only way where iron can be lost from the body is by loss of blood. So now iron is always present in Fe+3 form in the nature. So Fe+3 form cannot cross the cell membrane. This is an important thing to remember. Now whenever iron is present in Fe+3 form, if it is not reduced to Fe+2 form, iron cannot be absorbed. So if the important things that reduce the iron from Fe+3 to Fe+2 is gastric acid, along with that one reductase enzyme. So if these two things are absent, iron cannot be absorbed in the body. This is an important step which we need to remember. So now the dietary iron reaches duodenum. Duodenum is the site of absorption of iron. most of the nutrients in the body are absorbed from jejunum except iron, which is absorbed from duodenum. In duodenum we consider a duodenal cell. This is the lumen. Okay, now iron Fe+3 first attaches to one reductase enzyme. This reductase enzyme is ferroreductase, which is called as duodenal cytochrome B. So it attaches to duodenal cytochrome B and gets converted into Fe+2. Now Fe+2 is Fe+2 can be absorbed in the body. So what it does is that it attaches to another surface protein that is called as divalent metal transporter 1, DMT1, which is present in duodenum. So divalent means Fe, that is anything which has a +2 charge on it, it absorbs. So calcium is also absorbed from this channel. So it absorbs iron, which is in Fe+2 form. So now free iron in the body anywhere in the cells, that is if it is not attached to any other molecule, it is toxic, it destroys the cell. So if Fe+2 is left free in the duodenal cell, it causes lysis of the cell by Fenton's reaction. So what it does is that it attaches to one molecule called as apoferritin and converts it into ferritin. So now this ferritin has two pathways. Now this, if the body iron stores are normal, then this ferritin is stored as molecules in the cell containing Fe+2. This is called as hemosiderin. So if body does not require iron, then it is stored as hemosiderin, and when the duodenal cell is shredded, it is lost in the feces. So if the body requirement of iron is high, then this attaches to another molecule called as ferroportin, which transports it out, Fe+2. Now to transport it out, as I said earlier, Fe+3 transport molecule is always Fe+3, and Fe+2 only crosses the membrane. So what it does is that it attaches to another molecule here called as hephaestin. Now this hephaestin converts it into Fe+3, and this is transported. Okay, so now important step here to remember is that this ferroportin channel is under control of one molecule called as hepcidin. Now this hepcidin is secreted by liver. Now anything which is secreted by liver is an acute phase reactant. Acute phase reactant means what? That this molecule can be altered during any stage of inflammation. So during inflammation, hepcidin increases. So what this molecule does is that this molecule has a negative control over the ferroportin, has negative control over ferroportin. So when hepcidin levels are high, the ion absorption is inhibited because ferroportin is inhibited. When hepcidin levels are high, ion absorption is inhibited. So anything which causes increase in hepcidin levels. So in cases of inflammation, so take a chronic inflammatory disease such as rheumatoid arthritis or SLE, or you can take tuberculosis. So what these things do is that they increase the hepcidin levels because it is acute phase reactant. So hepcidin inhibits ferroportin. So when it inhibits ferroportin, the ion absorption is inhibited. This results in anemia, which is called as anemia of chronic disease. So the mechanism of anemia of chronic disease is that there is elevation on hepcidin level, which causes inhibition of ferroportin, which in turn results in decreased ion absorption. Now once ion gets attached to ion is converted to Fe+3 in the blood, it attaches to transferrin. Transferrin is a transport protein for iron. So now this iron plus transferrin compound has two pathways. One is that it goes to bone marrow for erythropoiesis, or it gets stored in the liver, or it goes to spleen for various enzymes, and also can go to muscle for myoglobin. So these are the fates of iron plus transferrin. So if it goes to bone marrow, in bone marrow there are cells, that is colony forming unit myeloid. So these cells express one receptor. These are called as transferrin receptor. So what this complex does is that it comes and binds to this transferrin receptor, and there is receptor mediated endocytosis. Whenever there is receptor mediated endocytosis, some of the receptors are released in the blood. Some of the receptors are released in the blood, which we can measure, and it helps in diagnosing iron deficiency anemia. So in the bone marrow, what happens in the bone marrow is that, suppose this is a cell, hematopoietic stem cell. Hematopoietic stem cell can divide into two forms, that is colony forming unit lymphoid and colony forming unit myeloid. Now this is not important for us. The cell which is important for us is colony forming unit myeloid. Now as we all know, this colony forming unit myeloid can form three types of cells. It is, one is platelets, next cell is RBCs, next cell is granulocytes, that is those neutrophils and all. So now how this myeloid colony forming unit myeloid knows what cell to form. So to form further cell, it is under control of various chemokines such as erythropoietin. Erythropoietin is an hormone secreted by kidney. So peritubular capillaries of the kidney are under control by liver, because liver secretes something called as hypoxia inducible factor, which acts on the peritubular capillaries and secretes erythropoietin. When erythropoietin is present, the colony forming unit myeloid forms some cell called as proerythroblast. So in hematopoiesis, you need to remember that everything starts with a pro. So once proerythroblast is formed, further action of erythropoietin on this results in. So as we all know, whenever a hormone acts on hormone or any chemokine acts on any cell, the first thing is that DNA forms RNA, RNA forms protein. So this is called as transcription, this is called as translation. This is a central dogma of protein synthesis. So what it does is that now the proerythroblast on this erythropoietin acts. So it forms various cells in the erythropoiesis. So the most important thing which we need to remember is that this divides into various cells. So three important stages we need to remember here. So the first stage is that where the nucleus is very big. Okay, so when the erythropoietin acts on this, it results in first thing is transcription. So because of transcription, there is production of RNA. So because RNA is basophilic in nature, the cytoplasm here is basophilic, so it is called as basophilic normoblast. So the next step would be there is condensation of the nucleus and production of first thing is condensation of the nucleus followed by production of hemoglobin. But the entire cytoplasm is not pink in color, but there is some amount of RNA also present. So as a result, it is both basophilic as well as eosinophilic. It is called as polychromatic. And the last stage is where the nucleus becomes very small, becomes eccentric, and the cytoplasm is completely, so we'll draw this. Cytoplasm is completely pink. It's small nucleus. Which is present eccentric. This is called as orthochromatic normoblast. So the first stage was proerythroblast forming basophilic normoblast, then polychromatic normoblast, then orthochromatic normoblast. Now this orthochromatic normoblast is has a small nucleus. So as we all know, RBCs does not contain nucleus as well as mitochondria. So nucleus is extruded from this and mitochondria is extruded. It forms reticulocyte. Now this reticulocyte reaches the blood. In 2 to 7 days, it forms mature RBC. These are the steps in erythropoiesis. Now, where all these molecules, vitamin B12 and folic acid as well as iron act. So now after erythropoietin acts at this stage, it forms basophilic normoblast. Now basophilic normoblast, what it does is that it produces RNA. So for production of RNA, it will require amino acid. Now for production of various cell organelles, it will require carbs, it require fats. Okay, so these are important steps. Now here you require iron. So at this stage you require iron to produce more hemoglobin. So the other thing is that if you notice that the nucleus as it matures, it goes on reducing in size. So it becomes smaller. Here it becomes completely eccentric and small and then extruded. So for nuclear maturation you require vitamin B12 and folic acid. So if vitamin B12 and folic acid is not present, so what happens is that the nucleus which is condensing as it matures does not condense and remains large. If the nucleus remains large, the cell will also remain large, resulting in some type of anemia called as macrocytic, where the cells are large, or also called as megaloblastic, because the bone marrow shows large blast, that is the normoblast is large, which is called as megaloblast. Now iron is required for hemoglobin synthesis. Hemoglobin is predominantly present in the cytoplasm. So if iron is not there, then the cytoplasm will shrink because there is not enough hemoglobin in the cytoplasm. As a result, it produces an anemia called as microcytic anemia, and because hemoglobin is less, the color will be not pink and will be hypochromic. So it is microcytic hypochromic anemia. So now based on this step, we know what all things are required for iron. So for production of RBCs. So based on that, we can divide the causes of anemia. For any nutritional deficiency, you can divide the causes as increased demand, increased loss, and decreased intake. So increased demand, when RBC production is increased, it could be increased demand due to rapid growth, that is during puberty or maybe during pregnancy. Okay, so increased loss most common is GI loss. GI loss may be occult due to malignancy or frank bleed, that is upper GI bleed, as well as melena. Okay. This is important. Other causes of increased iron loss could be repeated phlebotomy, which is done for polycythemia, or repeated blood donation, or loss from menses. Okay. Decreased intake could be a part of protein energy malnutrition itself, or maybe due to malabsorption. Now malabsorption could be due to, as I said, iron. For converting Fe+3 into Fe+2, you require gastric acid. So if there is achlorohydria, or if there is some gastrectomy for any surgical cause, or presence of Crohn's disease or tropical sprue, which inhibit absorption. So these are the causes of iron deficiency anemia. Now clinical features. Now clinical features of anemia. Now if there is oxygen supply to any tissue which is reduced, so what it will cause is that there is dysfunction of that tissue. So dysfunction of the muscles will result in easy fatigue, generalized weakness, because the oxygen supply to the organs is reduced. The heart will try to overcompensate. So heart will try to overcompensate, resulting in increase in the heart rate, which may be perceived as palpitation. As oxygen supply to the organs is reduced, what body will do is that body will try to increase the oxygen absorption. So this can be done by increasing the rate of breathing, which might result in breathlessness. The patient, because the supply to the brain, oxygen supply to the brain is reduced, it may manifest as dizziness, headache, etc. Other important symptom which is that is seen in children is that stunted growth. So most about 46% of Indian population is have stunted growth because of iron deficiency. Rapid hair loss is a common feature in females. Now when you examine the patient, the most important feature which you see is pallor. So pallor, which is seen in palpebral conjunctiva or any mucous membrane, or on the palms as well as nails. So whenever you see pallor in any patient, you look for other features of anemia. So what are the other features of anemia? Other features what are seen are because of the cause of anemia. So if it is iron deficiency, so you look for iron deficiency, you look for most important sign, that is koilonychia. Koilonychia is spooning of the nails. So look for spooning of the nails. Other important nail features are that the nail are fragile, brittle, and have longitudinal ridges. So these are seen in nails. Apart from that, you can get angular stomatitis, and also there is absence of tongue papillae. So if you find pallor, you look for this signs so that you can come to diagnosis of iron deficiency. If you feel it is due to vitamin B12, so you look for knuckle pigmentation. Knuckle pigmentation is a feature of vitamin B12 deficiency. Other features are, again, you can get angular stomatitis, chelosis. Apart from that, any other causes of anemia you cannot diagnose based on clinical features. Maybe the causes of other like underlying disease such as cirrhosis of liver, etc., may be seen, but the basic clinical features what you can find are these. Apart from that, another feature which the patient can present in iron deficiency anemia is dysphagia. Dysphagia, it may be due to post-cricoid stricture that is called as Plummer-Wilson syndrome. So now when you find any patient with pallor, so now next question comes is that how to investigate patient. So if you see investigation in any hematological disorder, the investigation would be blood investigation, biochemical, bone marrow. So these three are important. Apart from that, other investigation are there for cause of any disease. Like for causes of iron deficiency anemia, we'll do some other investigation. So in blood, you look for you write about RBCs, you write about WBCs, platelets, peripheral smear, indices. So in anemia, the important feature what you get is that in RBCs, the RBCs are reduced. That is the definition of anemia. WBCs are not affected in both megaloblastic, that is vitamin B12, or iron deficiency anemia. WBCs are normal. Now platelets are important because most patients who come with a routine blood report where there is no indices, no peripheral smear, only you get hemoglobin, WBCs and platelets. So when platelets can give you a clue to cause of anemia, that is in iron deficiency anemia there is increased platelet count. This is not there in vitamin B12. Vitamin B12, in contrast, you can get pancytopenia, which is common with vitamin B12, but increase in platelet counts, there are very less causes of thrombocytosis, that is apart from malignancies. The important treatable cause of thrombocytosis is iron deficiency anemia. So in a blood report, if you find thrombocytosis, look for possible cause could be iron deficiency anemia. So peripheral smell, whenever you send any patient for a complete hemogram, your pathologist will confuse you using big terms such as anisocytosis, poikilocytosis, teardrop cells, etc. So most of the people get confused because of those terms. So whenever you get complete hemogram, you look for two important things. One thing is that whether the size of the RBCs. Size of the RBCs. If the size of the RBCs is small, they write it as microcytic. If it is large, they write macrocytic. Now, you need to remember there are very few causes for microcytic anemia. So if you find anybody with microcytic anemia, you remember SITCL. SITCL is sideroblastic anemia, iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, anemia of chronic disease, and lead poisoning. So microcytic anemia, the causes are very few, that is sideroblastic anemia, iron deficiency anemia, thalassemia, anemia of chronic disease, and lead poisoning. Macrocytic anemia, all other causes, whatever may be, all other hematological disorder can cause macrocytic anemia, irrespective whether it is malignancy or anything, all can cause macrocytic anemia. Even hemolytic anemia, the picture would be macrocytic anemia only. Okay, so in hemogram, look for size of the RBCs. If you are investigating for anemia, just look for size of the RBCs. Don't go for any poikilocytosis, anisocytosis. This it is very difficult to remember all those types, different types of RBC morphology and remember the causes. Just see the shape of the RBCs. Microcytic anemia, then you investigate for this. If it is microcytic, then rest of the causes. Now next important thing what we need to see is the indices. So indices, what we see are MCV, MCH, MCHC. Now these two things are useless for us. So only important in indices is that MCV, which is important for us. MCV normal is 80 to 100. If it is less than 80, it means it is microcytic, means the cell size is small. So if it is less than 80, then you suspect it could be iron deficiency. Now based on this blood investigation, if you find this this feature, that is, if you find peripheral smear showing microcytosis, platelets are increased with MCV which is low, then you suspect iron deficiency. Now there are particular investigations for iron deficiency. One most important, which we all know, is serum iron. Now serum iron is 50 to 100, 50 to 150 microgram per deciliter. So if it is less than 50, it means there is iron deficiency. Now only this may be falsely normal in patients who are on iron supplements. Then in such cases, how to diagnose iron deficiency? Another important thing is that ferritin is the storage form of iron. So if ferritin is normal, that means that iron is normal. However, if ferritin is low, that means that patient has iron deficiency anemia. Now if ferritin is normal, it could be falsely normal because ferritin is again a acute phase reactant. So in any inflammatory response, the ferritin may be normal even though the patient has iron deficiency. In such cases, what we do is that we calculate something called as transferrin saturation. Now transferrin saturation, how we calculate transferrin saturation is that we calculate serum iron, multiply it by 100 and divide it by TIBC. TIBC is total iron binding capacity. Now what happens is that whenever a patient has deficiency of iron, the transferrin will bind more iron, so that more iron is delivered to the body, so that the iron stores are repleted. But if body iron stores are normal, the transferrin will bind less amount of iron. So the total iron binding capacity will increase when there is deficiency of iron. So what we notice in TIBC is that in iron deficiency anemia, TIBC is increased. Normal TIBC you can remember just as 200 to 400 microgram per deciliter. If TIBC is high, it means there is iron deficiency anemia. Another important feature which we soluble transferrin receptor. We actually take a ratio of soluble transferrin receptor to log of ferritin. If the ratio is more than 1.5, it means that there is iron deficiency anemia. If it is less than 1.5, it means anemia of chronic disease. Now bone marrow in iron deficiency is not indicated at all. Okay, bone marrow is only indicated for macrocytic anemia. Bone marrow is not indicated for iron deficiency anemia. So, but if you do bone marrow, the feature would be if there because there is deficiency of RBCs, the RBC series will be increased. That is hypercellularity with erythroid hyperplasia, and normoblast will be smaller in size, maybe micro normoblast. That is the only feature. Other thing is that when you stain for iron, the iron stores are reduced. Okay, so these are the lab investigations. So patient comes with pallor. What you do a routine blood test. On blood routine, you find hemoglobin is less, platelets are increased, so you suspect iron deficiency anemia. So next thing you do is you do a complete hemogram. Now when you do a complete hemogram, you find there is microcytosis, MCV is reduced. So the diagnosis goes more in favor of iron deficiency now. So you do biochemical parameters for iron deficiency. So you find serum iron which is reduced, serum ferritin which is low, transferrin total iron binding capacity is increased, transferrin saturation is reduced, soluble transferrin receptor to log of ferritin ratio is more than 1.5. Bone marrow is not indicated. Now whenever you see an adult male with iron deficiency anemia, adult with iron deficiency anemia, always rule out GI cause. So if there is a cardinal rule in iron deficiency, and iron deficiency in an adult male or post-menopausal female is always due to GI loss, GI blood loss, unless proved otherwise. So always rule out GI cause. So what you will do is that you do upper GI scopy. If you find peptic ulcer or duodenal ulcer, so you stop investigation at that site. If upper GI scopy is normal, the next step you do is you do colonoscopy and stool local blood. If colonoscopy is normal and stool local blood is positive, it could be because of helminthic infection, that is ankylostoma duodenal or Nigeter americanus. So you can investigate for OR cyst or directly treat for it. So most commonly what we do is directly treat for it. When you cannot find any cause on upper GI scopy, then you look for other causes, other causes of iron deficiency anemia. So what are the other causes of iron deficiency anemia? That is maybe extra GI blood loss, or maybe iron deficiency could be a manifestation of chronic inflammation. So you look for those causes. So now coming to treatment. Now once you find a patient with pallor, you investigate, you find it is iron deficiency, you look for cause. Look for cause is by doing upper GI scopy, lower GI scopy, stool local blood, or look for other chronic inflammatory disease. Now once you do this, next step is that how to treat the patient. Now most people will say iron supplements, but iron supplements, we all know iron supplements, but we don't know when to start, when to stop the treatment, how much dose is to be given. So the how to treat. Now treatment could be supplementation of iron, or blood transfusion. Now blood transfusion, we need to remember that blood transfusion is only indicated if there is heart failure or there is urgency in correcting hemoglobin, that is if patient is going for surgery, then those are the indications for this. Otherwise absolute indication is 7 milligram per deciliter. If the hemoglobin is less than 7 milligram per deciliter, but the patient is decompensating, patient should be decompensating. If patient is if the hemoglobin is suppose 6 and the patient is compensated, then there is no need for blood transfusion. You can supplement iron. Now iron supplement is either oral or parenteral. Now parenteral is indicated when you need rapid correction, like if suppose the patient is pregnant female and presents to you at around 32 weeks, so hemoglobin is around 8, so in such cases parenteral iron supplementation. Or suppose if patient is in heart failure with fluid overload and acutely you cannot transfuse more blood because of fluid overload, in such cases with diuretic you can transfuse the blood, or you can give a parenteral dose of iron, but the response to parenteral dose of iron is slow, requires about 4 to 6 weeks. So first coming to oral supplementation. Now oral supplementation iron, the dose of iron what we require is elemental iron of 150 to 200 milligram per day. Now the preparations what are available, one is that what we write is ferrous sulfate, Now ferrous sulfate is available in two doses, 325 and 195. Now 325 will give 65 milligram and 195 will give about 39 milligram. So whenever you whatever is available in most hospital pharmacies is 325 milligram, which gives 65. So you need to give it start with BD and reach TID. Okay, start with BD and reach TID doses. So if you use ferrous sulfate, start with BD, increase TID. Now many people develop gastritis because of this. So generally iron is given on an empty stomach because food inhibits its absorption. So when you start iron empty stomach, most people develop gastritis, dyspepsia. So that can be prevented by giving the dose iron with meal, or maybe reducing the frequency. So initially start with OD, increase to BD, then increase to TID. So whenever patient, if you start low with low dose, the treatment requires longer duration. The other iron preparations which are available is iron fumarate, ferrous fumarate, gluconate, or polysaccharide. Now polysaccharide is the best form because 150 dose gives 150 elemental iron, and gastric complaints with this are observed to be less. However, there are no conclusive studies of benefit of iron polysaccharide iron over ferrous iron, but polysaccharide iron, which is available as Ferrizome tablet, is really better in clinical practice. So once you start with oral, how many months to continue? Generally hemoglobin increases by 2 to 3 by 2 milligram 2 gram per deciliter in about 3 weeks, and returns to normal in about 2 months. So if the patient hemoglobin does not, if the diagnosis is iron deficiency anemia, and if the patient's hemoglobin does not return to normal in 2 months, then it could be because the patient is non-compliant with the treatment, or there is poor absorption. So in such cases you do something called as iron tolerance test. So what you do is that after fasting for 12 hours, give patient 2 tablets of iron, and then after 2 to 3 hours measure his serum iron. So serum iron should increase by at least 100 microgram per deciliter after 2 tablets of iron. If there is no increase, that means there is faulty absorption of iron from the GI tract. So you need to treat that first, or switch over to parenteral preparation before treating the patient. Now once you start with the iron, in 2 months hemoglobin returns to normal. So that does not mean that that is the end point of treatment. The treatment should continue for at least 6 to 12 months, at least for 6 months after replenishing the hemoglobin to normal, to replenish the store. So once the hemoglobin comes normal, so after that you need to give iron preparation maintenance dose of 60 milligram of elemental iron. That is, you can give 1 tablet of ferrous sulfate for 6 months. And Harrison mentions up to 12 months, but generally what we practice in clinical practice is that we give for about 6 months after hemoglobin returns to normal. Now coming to parenteral treatment. For parenteral treatment, the drugs what we use is are iron dextran, iron sucrose, or iron carboxymaltose. Now iron carboxymaltose is a very good drug because you can give it in a single dose. No multiple sessions are required. Very less side effects, and it is proven to be beneficial, especially in patients with low ejection fraction heart failure. A brand name which is commonly used is Ferinject. So how you calculate how much is iron required? So what you do is that you multiply 2.3 into body weight, and from this it is hemoglobin deficit. Patients 15 minus patient's hemoglobin. To this you add 500 or 1000. So 500 or 1000 is to replenish the store. So this will give you the total deficit. So suppose total deficit is 1500. So 1500 milligram you need to give. If you are using dextran, then you can give it in single dose. But dextran is associated with various side effects, so we don't use commonly. The other thing which we use is sucrose, iron sucrose. Now iron sucrose generally, what they mention is that you need to give 200 milligram multiple session over 4 to 5 days, and 200 milligram is to be given over 4 to 6 hours. So before starting iron dextran, you need to iron dextran or iron sucrose, you need to give a 25 milligram test dose. Now 25 milligram test dose is given IV and not subcutaneously. So 25 milligram of iron is given over 30 minutes, or given over 30 seconds, and patient is observed for 15 minutes. If there is no reaction, then you can give the full infusion. So these are very slow and require multiple sessions. Iron dextran can be given with single dose but has various side effects. So the newer drug which is available is iron carboxymaltose. So it is available in 500 milligram. So you need to dilute it with 100 ml NS and give an infusion over 15 to 20 minutes. So this maximum dose what we can give is 1000 milligram per week. So if it is 1500, you give 1000 this week and 500 in the next week, and the deficiency is corrected easily. So iron carboxymaltose is very important. Now once you correct the with parenteral iron, does that mean that oral supplementation is not required? So there is a concept that says that if you start with parenteral iron and you give complete, total deficit is corrected, but still you need to give maintenance iron for at least a month. You need to give maintenance iron for at least a month, and then stop, because hemoglobin returns to normal in about a month after parenteral therapy. So if the patient is refractory to iron, then you need to rule out even parenteral iron. Then you need to rule out some genetic causes of iron deficiency, genetic causes such as iron resistant iron deficiency anemia due to mutation in TMPRSS gene, etc. So you need to rule out those causes. So with this approach to iron deficiency anemia is complete. If you like my video, kindly subscribe to my channel. Thank you.